Welcome to day 2 of the Symbiosis Lit Fest. We're now going to start with session 1 of the day, and I'd like to invite the Pro-Chancellor of Symbiosis International University, Dr. Vidya Yerodekar, to welcome the distinguished speaker, Mr. Shekhar Gupta, and the moderator for the day, Dr. Ruchi Kher Jaggi, for this session. Dr. Vidya.
Thank you, Anita. Good morning to all the participants of this second day of the Symbiosis Literary Festival. Thank you, Shekhar Gupta ji, for accepting our invitation. I know I was literally after you and I know how busy you are, but I'm very, very grateful to you for having accepted to speak at the Symbiosis Literary Festival, that too on a Sunday morning. But let me tell you that the audience being Sunday is very large. It's not just our students, but people from all over Pune city, as well as our alumni from all across India, as well as all across the world, from wherever it is convenient for them to attend. It is virtual, so obviously there are more number of participants this time than a physical literary festival on our campus. We had a great day yesterday with very eminent speakers, and today we begin with Shekhar Gupta ji, you, and I'm sure your speech and your talk is going to be ever inspiring to all our young students who are watching you and are going to listen to you. The Symbiosis Literary Festival is a part of our Symbiosis Golden Jubilee lecture series. And unfortunately, because of the COVID, we could not have any physical celebrations on campus. And therefore, we were compelled to have virtual celebrations. But I think it's something which is like God sent, that, with the virtual celebration, more number of students, more number of other people can attend such virtual events. So I'm sure each one of them is going to enjoy. And we hope to continue with these virtual events through the year of 2020 and 2021. So over to you, Ruchi.
It's a pleasure to be back. Like Dr. Vidya just said, that we had a great day yesterday, and Dr. Anita Patankar summarized and recapped the yesterday for us so beautifully, and we are looking so forward to the day today. But to begin the day, we have none other than Mr. Shekhar Gupta with us, who starts today's session. And the topic of the session is Trial by Media, the Big Indian TV News Narrative. I don't think that there could have been a better time to think about this topic. I think this topic has always been so relevant, but just what we've been going through in the last few months in particular, starting June 14, and very, very recently with the entire controversy around fudging of the TRP data, this topic has found more resonance in terms of trying to unpack it for our understanding. And who better than Mr. Shekhar Gupta to talk about it to all of us and help us understand it in a nuanced way. However, as the moderator of the session, though all of us know the credibility, the stature, and the expertise of a journalist like Mr. Shekhar Gupta, but it is my duty to give a formal introduction to him. I'd like to first introduce Mr. Shekhar Gupta and his background to all our participants here, and then take forward the session. So Mr. Shekhar Gupta built his name, byline, and reputation over 3 decades of seminal reporting from the political and social front lines of a changing India for print publications. He added television to his portfolio at the peak of his career as the editor-in-chief of the Indian Express. Just as his print byline is today synonymous with unparalleled credibility, independence, and influence, his work on TV, both commentary and interviewing, reflects the same attributes. A recipient of the Padma Bhushan in 2009, India's third highest civilian honor, Mr. Shekhar Gupta is also the founder, chairman, and editor-in-chief of The Print. He also writes a widely acknowledged weekly column, National Interest. While Mr. Gupta became a familiar face on NDTV early on as a talking head, Walk the Talk was his first regular TV show. Sure enough, it's developed a style and tenor of its own. In times of noisy name-calling and finger-pointing that mostly passes off as TV interviewing, it developed a new concept of intelligent, mature conversation where the guest is shown respect. Before turning entrepreneur and launching his media venture, The Print, Mr. Gupta worked for the Indian Express in 2 spells of 6 and 19 years respectively, with a 12-year stint at India Today magazine in between. A familiar face at significant public discussions and events, and a sought-after public speaker, He's also the author of the following books: Assam, A Valley Divided in 1984, India Redefines Its Role in 1995, and in 2014, Anticipating India, The Best of National Interest. It is my pleasure to welcome Mr. Shekhar Gupta to the Symbiosis Literature Festival. He would share his views on the topic Trial by Media, the Big Indian TV News Narrative. Sir, may I request you to please take the stage and share some introductory remarks, and then we will carry forward the interaction. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be invited to speak here. Symbiosis is among the finest private sector institutions in the country, and I compliments to your founders, who are Mr. Majumdar. He is a true institution builder. There are very few people in the country who built institutions out of their own enterprise, and I think he's a pioneer and an institution builder. So my compliments, and all of us sit in eternal gratitude of people like him. Also, I have a special note of thanks because we have hired and worked with Symbiosis journalism graduates for a long time, and not just journalism, but also your MBAs. MBAs, currently the person who works with me in my office on digital marketing, which I know nothing about, is a Symbiosis graduate. And another key person in our marketing sales corporate side is also a Symbiosis MBA who's worked with me, in fact, in 2 spells of 8 years in the Express and now here. So that is my tribute to Symbiosis. I'm very happy to speak with all of you. I know it's a great audience. I also apologize to you. It's a Sunday, so I did not, I thought I would not be so heartless as to drag somebody from their home to help me manage Zoom today, because I'm not so smart with all this, but I have done something. I've put a few books under my iPad, book on top of my iPad, and I'm still trying to, I've just switched off some lights and switched on some lights. So I hope this works. Now, I'll speak with you for some time, and then you can ask me questions, because I know what your questions are, and I suspect most of you know what I'm going to talk about. Now, and it's a good thing that I'm doing it just the day after I have, our team has finished our tenure as office bearers of the Editors Guild, because being the head of Editors Guild, I would have felt awkward saying critical things about the media anywhere. Nevertheless, I think once you give me a platform and a microphone, it's difficult to, I would not have restrained myself, but now I feel easier. Now, if you look at trial by media and TV news, first of all, what is TV news? Now, I know that there's a lot of nostalgia. Just recently, a photograph appeared of old Doordarshan newscasters. They're very distinguished, very well-dressed, sari-clad, wonderful women who used to read the news. And there was a lot of nostalgia, a lot of people saying, can we get these people back? Can we get these people back? Now, I would have been tempted to say that you can get them back, but you will then only get your news from Doordarshan and All India Radio and stuff like that. So do you only want to get your news from the government, from government institutions? Because people have forgotten, most of the students here, in fact, many of the faculty also, would not remember the times of the Cold War and the Soviet bloc and the Communist bloc. And when, say, Soviet Union had two publications, they had Pravda and they had TASS. So Pravda means the truth, TASS means the news. So TASS was a news agency, Pravda was a newspaper. So the joke then used to be in Moscow that we have 2 publications. One is called the news, one is called the truth. There is no truth in the news, and there is no news in the truth. So Doordarshan also was no better than that. Everything started with Pradhan Mantri ne aaj kaha hai. So you can watch Doordarshan. So India needed private satellite TV channels. It was very important for India to have that, because without that, India would not have had free democratic discussion. Because if government is the only source of news that you can get, then you are not living in a democracy. Now, I will give you some examples. And this is, I'm saying good things about television media right now. The examples are in 1971, when India-Pakistan war was taking place. I was 14 years old. My mother would not believe that Dhaka had fallen to the Indian forces until she heard that on the BBC. It's only when she heard that on the BBC that she believed, because All India Radio, we didn't have TV then because there was no TV outside of Delhi. It was only in 50 kilometers radius of Delhi until then. So we had no TV, plus we couldn't afford a TV. So we were listening to radio, and she said, "ये तो आकाशवाणी है, इसका क्या भरोसा है?" So it's only when she heard on BBC that she actually believed that Dhaka had fallen. Then I switch you 13 years from now, from then. So 13 years from then, you come to October 1984. October 1984, Rajiv Gandhi. First was my mom in 71. Now Rajiv Gandhi in 1984 end would not believe his mother had been assassinated because he was traveling in Bengal. He would not believe that his mother had been assassinated until he heard this from BBC. Now, do you rely on the BBC to tell you any news today? Because you know the news. All of you students have been born and grown up at a time when you didn't need to use the BBC. In fact, I play this game with much older people than you. Also than a lot of your faculty. When I go to the big institutions of the armed forces, for example, or say administrative academies of various kinds, whether it's IAS or tax service, revenue service, or whatever, or even senior people, I ask them a tricky question or a trick question. I ask them, how many of you know the name of Mark Telley? Everybody does. And in fact, if I ask you that question in a hall, how many of you know the name of Mark Telley? Many of the students will also know the name of Mark Telley, the legendary BBC bureau chief in India. Then the second question I ask them, which I will ask you also now, is, do you know the name of the BBC bureau chief now? Chances are almost nobody will know. If anybody knows, he or she should appear for UPSC, will become an IAS officer, right? Because obviously with mugging up all the stuff that is irrelevant to you. That's why we have such great governance in this country. Now, let me ask you my third trick question. How many people here, including the faculty, can tell me the name of any BBC bureau chief since Mark Telley? Chances are almost nobody can. Why? Why did that change come in? That change came in because around time Mark Telley faded or retired, and I think the world of him, I've traveled with him, I've covered many big stories with him. But around time he retired, private sector news media came up in India. Now, private sector news media came up in India. It's a complicated story on TV, but I will tell you a couple of landmarks. In 1982, India got its first color TV. And it's first got television with slightly higher range. Why? Because it's only when a crisis or an opportunity comes that something happens in India. So 1982 Asian Games took place in Delhi. So for the Asia, India allowed the import of color TVs, and also DD extended the range. So even people say 200 kilometers away could watch DD. Let me tell you that Cricket World Cup of 1983, which is after Asian Games, Cricket World Cup of 1983, which India won. I used to live in Shillong then. I was covering the Northeast. You could not watch it on Indian TV then. We went to a friend's place and we were able to catch it on Bangladesh TV at that point because Bangladesh is next door to Meghalaya. Nevertheless, so after that came 1991. Now, 1991, many things happened. One, India's economy reformed and a lot of the controls, etc., were taken away. And second, the Gulf War took place. The first Gulf War, when Saddam Hussein had occupied Kuwait. When the first Gulf War took place, it was the first war in the world, the first big event on satellite live TV. That's when people were going to five-star hotels, wherever, who had access to this satellite TV. And suddenly this clamor started in India that we have to start something. So a few things started on TV. The World This Week started. Aaj Tak started on Doordarshan. That was the first. Those are the first private sector news shows on official media. And then came private channels. And private channels then became a force for good. They became part of India's strength. They became part of India's soft power. In fact, to take you back to a genuine, authenticated, quoted story, is that when the war in Kargil was taking place, Indian Army and Indian government, Vajpayee government, allowed media reasonably free access in the battle zone. In fact, if there's another fighting of that kind tomorrow, I guarantee to you there'll be no such access. But there was access. And initially, a lot of people in the establishment were irritated that journalists were bringing bad news, because initial days of that war, there was only bad news. So they were coming in, they were complaining. But as the news turned, we began to believe it. Why? We began to believe it because we knew that the same media in the same environment was also bringing the bad news. So that built credibility that they are reporting factually. So Nawaz Sharif once said, and this is a quoted statement from him, that his army was not even telling him that there is a proper war going on and that Tiger Hill has fallen. So when he would check with the army, what is Tiger Hill? They'll say there's no such feature like Tiger Hill. Ye nonsense hai, Indian propaganda hai. And then his family saw Indian soldiers with the tricolor on Tiger Hill on Indian TV channels. I think it was ZTV. And then he confronted his generals and said, look, Indian TV is showing this. So this is when you realize that private sector, independent media is a force for the good. And I'm not saying this for any particular TV channel. But then something began to change after that. And what began to change after that was that people realized that news TV is a very small economics. It has a very small economy. It has a very small economy, and news TV anchors have really Taj Mahal sized egos. And the economy of news channels cannot match the size of the ego of news channel anchors. And you can see, I could see them at airports resenting that that the CISF fellow gives them a pat down. Janta nahi main kaun hu, right? Mujhe dikhta nahi. So this stardom rubbed off on some, and the owners also began to think that if I have so much power from this medium, why can't I get more money from it? Because most news channels were never highly profitable. Barring a few, say, dominant ones in Hindi, etc., like Aaj Tak, most others were not. They cannot be highly profitable because there is an economic imperative there. Economic imperative there is that unlike print, which gets advertising that TV doesn't get. We get tenders, for example. We get company reports, for example. We get corporate advertising. TV, on the other hand, gets consumer goods advertising, credit cards, underclothes. The biggest advertiser, I think, is underclothes, Rupa underwear, Falana underwear, this underwear, that underwear. Then you have these now, as you can see, these new deodorants masked as perfumes. Then you have also upmarket products, credit cards. You have loans, housing loans. You have all this stuff which goes to TV. What happens on TV is that if you look at the viewership of TV channels, entertainment channels, or cricket channels, say in IPL, then all of India's news channels together are less than 2% of India's TV audiences. Now the same product sellers have to go to the large audience on these channels. So many of them have to go to, say, Kaun Banega Crorepati. So many of them have to go to IPL. Now, if they go to news channels to sell the same product, one, because these channels have large audiences, their rates are very high. And they have to go there, so they are left with very little money. And that little money goes to the news channels. Now, Mara Mari, all this desperation is for that little money. Now, there, the winner takes all. So everybody wants to be number one. And what is the currency for being number one? It is my TRPs. So then you do anything. Then you lie, cheat, poison your rival's lunch, bribe, do whatever to get your ratings up. Because when you get ratings up, and like this surprises me, many of your students will go and work in advertising tomorrow. It surprises me that ad agencies also go along with it. They don't take their clients that you're being sold a lemon. You're being sold fraud data. And also, this is not the quality of audiences you probably want, but they are also lazy. I think they think, we need data. My client is a sucker. Usko data dalunga, wo ad lega, mujhe commission milega, khatam ho gayi baat meri. So, because that system has come up, a lot of people are desperate now just to get their ratings up. And that is why our anchors have become either comedians, most of them, not all, either comedians or villains, and sometimes both. Sometimes in Hindi cinema, villains can be quite funny also, na? You see all Ajit fellow, and all the Ajit jokes, because villains were funny, because, ultimately the guy is going to die, right? You hated the guy for an hour and a half, but, ultimately the guy will lose. Either he will die, or once the hero bashes him up, then the police will come in a jeep, and then there'll be a group photo of the good guys, and bad guys will go to jail. So you also laughed at the villain. So that is what happened. As that happened, India lost its advantage. So TV news disappeared. Now you tell me, none of your students, I guarantee to you, none of your students has seen what is called a TV news bulletin on any of India's private news channels. Today, if you want to see a TV news bulletin in the evening, you have to go to Doordarshan. And that's why this nostalgia for these old Doordarshan newsreaders. Because none of our private channels today has the patience or time or sponsors to give you a proper news program. Nobody does it. So in the evening, you have these debates. So the channels presume कि आपको खबर सब पता है, or you are left to your own devices. That's why you should subscribe to the print and watch the print, because we give you the news through the day, and authentic news. And when we get it wrong, we say sorry and correct it, which fortunately is very rarely. But TV doesn't give you news anymore. So TV in the evening picks up the controversial story of the day, or what they think is the controversial story of the day. And when there is no controversy also, they make up a controversy, because something has to be, some prime time rage has to be generated. And then you see these discussions and coverage with a drum roll and background music. Dun, 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 dun. I don't know, in North India, there used to be, there still is Ramlila. I am sure other parts of the country have a bit like that. Rakshasas come, Ravan Sena comes from this side, and Bhagwan Ram Sena comes from the other side. And they wave all their stuff. It's all fake. Nobody kills anybody. And then there's music. And that's what goes on our TV channels now. So that's why some of these are Raman channels, because Raman had 10 heads. So you get 10 heads. In fact, now you begin to get 12, 13, 12, 14, even more. And then one of Raman's head was a Gada. So maybe the anchor plays that role. So today, TV news is not news. And once you start once your main currency for getting ratings and audiences is a so-called debate in the evening, that debate has to become a trial. It becomes a trial by media. Also, how do you generate something every day when channels that specialize in trial by media, and that are number 1, 2, 3? It also speaks for audience taste. But I also understand that audience wants entertainment. And I do also believe that now IPL is on for 5 or 6 weeks. The audience of these channels would have come down, because people have other entertainment to watch than TV channels. I watch IPL every day. But if you are holding these debates, these are trials. And these channels, which are media trial channels, none of them takes on the government of the government of the day as long as the government is powerful. They took on UPA-2 because they knew UPA-2 was a dead duck, right? It was a dead duck that was kneecapped also. So they could not have hit back. The establishment at that time was Anna movement, which was a purely political movement. Nobody bothered to question it. Nobody dared to question it because one, it was seen as something that got you TRPs. And second, because it was seen to be too virtuous. And third, because they were the establishment. So I will tell you a conversation that I had, and I'm not betraying a private conversation because I have written that in the preface of my collection of national interest articles, my earlier collection called Anticipating India, that Arvind Kejriwal once came to meet me. And he said, Shekharji, please tell me one thing, the line that you have taken on our movement, how is your marketing department responding to it? Are they happy with it? So I told him that, look, I am not producing a tele-serial that I have to get TRPs. And I am not producing a Bollywood film that I have to see 100 crore collection over the first weekend. This is news. News is what it is. I can't tailor the news to suit my marketing department's interests. And also, this is the Indian Express. My marketing department knows not to have these expectations. But everybody who today complains about everybody, you can go and check and do your Google search. Everybody who's now claiming to be Raja Satyavadi Harishchandra, everybody who's claiming to be Butros Ghali, Secretary General of the UN, etc., and being an angel, everybody ran that propaganda unquestioningly. Everybody. That was the first big mass level trial by the media held by India's TV channels. It was held by every single TV channel. There was not a single exception. And it was successful. It was successful. It worked for all of them. In fact, you can go, if somebody does research, you can find anchors and respectable anchors today who are all now Arnab Pidit, as I call them, right? All these Arnab Pidit, holier than cow anchors, they were at that point campaigners for Anna movement and calling everybody in the government corrupt. And they were all unquestioningly accepting 1,76,000 crore of 2G scam. And I would say, अरे भाई सोचो 2007 में ये scam हुआ. 2007 में all of India's defense budget was $2 billion less than 1,76,000 crores. Do you really think that the value of this much spectrum could be $2 billion more than all of India's defense budget? India's defense forces employ 1.5 million people, pensions, this, that. ये कैसे हो सकता है? Figures must stand the test of reasonableness. Coal, 3.5 lakh crores. Then something else, 5 lakh crores. Then uske baad नई mythology build हुई that India has 16 lakh crores of black money overseas. It will come back. So that led to the final jumla that when it comes back, Mr. Modi will send to every citizen 15 lakh rupees. Right? Now, a lot of the people who unquestioningly went along with it today are being virtuous and laughing at it and saying it was a jumla, etc., etc. But because they ran all this and they were successful at that point, everybody thought this is now journalism. That journalism is, we are judges, juries, executioners, prosecutors, and also Lord Almighties. So our egos got even more bloated. Once again, the market size did not catch up with the size of our bloating egos. Now you have a situation where some TV channels and some anchors have now perfected this art. And once you go to this place, you can't fight the government of the day because you are in the pocket of the government of the day. Also, you don't dare to fight the government of the day because government is powerful. This is not UPA-2. This is Narendra Modi's government. If you give them too much trouble, then CBI and ED and God knows what else will come at you. So udhar panga nahi lena hai. But how do you create this outrage and trial? Then you find other victims who maybe not are not capable of defending themselves like this. You can find a Shashi Tharoor one day, right? आप किसी को भी उसका गधा बोलो ये गधा है, and you start beating up that ass, right? Similarly, Sushant Singh Rajput, now fellow died. There is no evidence of anything. It looks like suicide. I'm not saying it can't be anything else, but there has to be evidence. Some agency has to come with something, right? Then you painted everybody who was close to him as a likely murderer. You painted anybody who was found smoking anything and blowing some smoke away to be a drug addict. You make no distinction between somebody doing an occasional pot smoke and somebody doing hard drugs. Nothing. You paint all of Bollywood as drug addled. The fact is that, I'm sure people do drugs and all, and I don't know what drugs. But the fact is that if you look at Bollywood actors and people today, they are much fitter than before. We love the movies of 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. And you see Rajendra Kumar with his sort of 3 inches of his midriff coming out. You see Raj Kapoor, who was always twice the size a hero is these days. You see Devanand, who always got beaten up by the other guy because it was sexy to be frail those days. But you see these people, they are all sculpted in gyms these days, men as well as women. They work very hard. They are very punctual. One thing I will tell you is that my big learning over the past 15 years is that people in India who was notoriously late earlier have now become, for people like me, late Latifs, notoriously punctual. And those include politicians, bureaucrats, and film stars, because films are now a very competitive business. So in this situation, you then have to create complete mythologies. So you create a mythological case, a mythological victim, a mythological guilty, and then you pronounce the person guilty. And as the facts come out and you're proven wrong, you move on to the next one. So this is the new thing, and that is what's leading to a big popular disenchantment with the media. So it's strange. People are watching this media and yet they are disenchanted with it. Why? Because they are not watching it as news media. They are watching it as cheap entertainment. Cheap in both ways. It costs nothing to watch news TV channels, right? It comes as part of a package, ₹1 a month. And also, it is cheap in its quality. So cheap stuff sells. Many films by many very good films might fail, but any rubbish produced by Salman Khan works. In fact, most of you go and watch every Salman Khan film. They are crap, right? But I can say crap, but you can't fight with the market. And that's exactly, this is the Salman Khanization of TV news. And that's why so many people are now nostalgic about this sari-clad Meenu Talwars and Gitanjali Ayers and all those old, at least the TV news readers at my generation is familiar with. So I think I'll stop there. I think maybe I've taken a bit long, but if you have time for an interaction, I'm very happy. I'm at your service.
Thank you so much for that very, very sharp, insightful, from history to the contemporary overview that you gave us of this huge beast called TV news that everybody is trying to tame currently. We also have been joined by our Honorable Chancellor, Dr. S.B. Mujumdar, in the session. And sir would just say hello to you first. Yeah.
Namaste, Shekhar ji. Namaste. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you, sir. I'm so happy to see you.
Yes.
Healthy. I know that in the challenge of running multiple
I must tell my students that Pune loves Shekhar Gupta and Shekhar Gupta loves Pune.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming. Thank you.
And I am so particularly grateful to you and the entire Symbiosis family for looking after my older brother Arun Shori so generously and marvelously.
Thank you so much. We have a few student questions, Mr. Gupta, and I think before I kind of take on, I just have one intervention, a question, a comment that I would like you to comment on, and then I'll bring in the student questions. So it's specifically dealing with the TRP controversy that we are currently looking at. So the News Broadcasters Association, which is headed by Rajat Sharma, has appreciated, lauded, the decision of the suspension of the BARC ratings for 12 weeks. However, the other association, which is called the News Broadcasters Federation, which is headed by Arnab Goswami, has naturally criticized it significantly. Now, both of them, as journalists, as heads of two news organizations, apparently are ideologically on the same side. However, they have polarized opinions, very divergent opinions when it comes to the suspension of the BARC ratings. Please help us make sense of that.
Well, first of all, I think ideology has nothing to do with competition in the marketplace. In fact, if you are of the same ideology, then competition for you gets even sharper, because you don't have, in the marketplace, you need product differentiation, right? So if your ideology is the same, then your product is the same. So you're fighting for the same eyeballs. It becomes tougher. Second, I'd say, having known Rajat Sharma for a long time, I take him quite seriously as a journalist, editor. He has views, he has his views, etc., etc. But I treat him with respect. Third, I think the basic question is that when your market is so small, and then your sample is so small. Now, I know that sampling is a science, but that science also means that your meters or boxes should be in the right demographics. Then also you should be able to maintain the secrecy, because that is the key thing. It's like, what's the point of holding a board exam if you leak the papers, right? For money. So what's happening with TRP is a leakage of papers on an institutional basis.
Right.
So I don't think this TRP business works anymore. And I think its time is now getting over, because more and more audiences are now shifting to digital. So even TV channels are being watched more and more on digital platforms now. As that happens, digital, some Siri auntie or Google uncle counts everything anyway. So you have nowhere to hide and you have nothing to fix.
Right. So, I mean, since we are like running short of time, sir, I'll invite the first student to ask a question. May I ask Kanisha Shah from our undergraduate media communication school, Symbiosis Center of Media and Communication, to come on camera and ask her question? Kanisha, go ahead quickly. Yeah.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir. So my question to you is, do you think there is an increasing effect of whataboutism, cancel culture, and extreme trolling on social media? And how do you think that has affected the notion of free speech?
See, there is cancel culture, etc., which is, I don't like it, right? I mean, it doesn't bother me personally, but I don't like it. I mean, I got cancelled by a well-known film personality, a well-known liberal film personality, because somebody whose article we ran on the print, who has nothing to do with us, casual article, said something which was unacceptable even to us, to anybody, any decent person on Twitter. Now, we had no leverage over the person, but somebody got upset that we had run his article before he had written this on Twitter. So, used to follow me for a long time, stopped following me. Now, that if makes somebody happy, किसी की भड़ास निकल जाए तो अच्छी बात है. But if your idea is to take the liberal argument forward, then you don't cancel. So trolling is a part of life. It doesn't bother me. Until now, I have never blocked anybody. I have never reported anybody. क्या फर्क पड़ता है? जो privately गाली निकालेगा उससे अच्छा public में निकालो. At least we know who's doing it. So that's okay. The only thing I've done now on social media is I do not respond to anybody who's anonymous or who has a fake name or pseudonym, because I don't know who the person is. So beyond that, I think this is a phase. It is much stronger in Western countries, particularly in America, on American campuses, elsewhere. I think it's a phase, it will go away, particularly if Trump loses. See, a lot of the people on the liberal side are responding to this changed world, which is all being governed by, look at the state of the world. In America, you have Trump, then you have Putin in Russia, you had Shinzo Abe, is now gone in Japan, but replaced by someone like Shinzo Abe, Xi Jinping in China, Narendra Modi in India, Erdogan in Turkey, Netanyahu in Israel, Orban in Hungary, Bolsonaro in Brazil, and when you get bored, you have Duterte in the Philippines. So this is a world being run by alpha males of the right. In that situation, the liberal lot is now seething because they think कि क्या मुसीबत है, इनको वोट मिलते हैं तो इनको हटा तो सकते नहीं हैं हम, so कुछ कैंसिल कर देते हैं किसी को. So I think that's what goes on. I think it's a matter of time. This will pass.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much.
I forgot Boris Johnson.
Yeah. So moving on to Aditya Kurian of the Symbiosis School of Economics after this. Aditya, please ask your question.
Yeah, yes, sir. So I wanted to ask you a question based on the same lines, based along the same lines. So do you think media has instilled the sort of fear that now that it's become a sort of tyrannical figure that it hoped to bring down in the first place? Do you think it's become sort of intolerant to everything and anything that you do now?
Well, some sections, yes. But you know, we should not get confused by noise on social media. Because a lot of the people who do this stuff on social media are genuinely underemployed. And if this has become worse over the past few months, that's because of the decline in our economic growth and the pandemic and the rest, the level of underemployment has increased even more. So, ab log karte rehte hain, people have itchy fingers. But I don't think you should let this confuse you, because if that was the case, then something like the print will not be working. We are not even behind a paywall. And yet people are contributing to us as voluntary subscriptions. They don't have to. That tells you that a lot of people, they like free debate, free journalism. They are not caught up in this. So this is a democracy. Many things will go on parallelly.
Right. Thank you, sir. I think we're really running short of time. So I'll quickly take on one more question from Amolika Tripathi. Amolika, are you online? Right, Amolika, go ahead, be quick. Unmute.
So my question to you is that can journalism be done with having humor as a key element, but also at the same time without watering down the main contents of the matter?
Having humor as the main element?
Yeah.
I mean, do you like humor? Do you write, do humor? I mean...
No, sir, it's like... children of the younger age, if they want to get motivated to watch news in the form of some entertainment, so can that be done? Is it possible?
Well, I mean, yes, I wish it was done as humor and satire. What is lacking on Indian media is humor, healthy humor. Instead of that, you have unhealthy rumor all the time. And it's in print also. Even in print, we Indians don't write very good satire. In old days, Dr. Majumdar and others would remember that newspapers used to have a middle article on the page, which used to be a little bit funny. My favorite writer in the Times of India used to be a man called V.D. Trivedi. But now in our media, there is no humor. And because there is no humor and there is no satire, you get two kinds. Either you have anchors who become jokers. Somebody is lying in a bathtub to reenact how Sridevi died. Somebody is wearing flak jackets as if he's a commando going to fight a war. Somebody has an AK-47 replica on his wall. These are anchors trying to be comedians. Or then you have really slapstick kind of humor that you see on some TV channels. You know, all sort of animated humor, at the end of which Narendra Modi and Amit Shah always win. So So really, Indian media needs genuine humor, satire, a touch of irreverence, which is missing right now. And if it's there, I know the audiences would love it. It's just that I don't have that talent. And if I find anybody with talent, I will embrace them and wrap them in cotton wool and not let them go away anywhere.
Beautiful. I think we're really short of time, but I will not call Shivani Birangi on camera, but sir, her question was more to do with, and you know, when you were talking about humor and used the word anchors as Joker, I was actually reminded of the quintessential Batman Joker who says, "Why so serious?" Right? And I think I would really like to ask you this question that Shivani had, especially with respect to the Print's initiative on the campus front. You know, on the website of the Print, we right now see a lot of invite to younger students from campuses, and you're spearheading this opinion of young people, and you want to feature them on the website. So she really wanted to know a little bit more about that, and I think it will be great for all our students to hear about it.
Look, thank you. What we are trying to do is, we are trying to destroy the opinion industry in India. What is the opinion industry? You find about 30 bylines talking about everything. Mine is among them. So we write about politics, we write about strategic issues, we write about cricket, we write about the economy. You can't have, in a country of 1.38 billion, you can't have all opinion controlled by 30 people. So we are trying to expand it. Also, we don't believe that students are not yet grown-ups, or that you have to be 65 years old to have an opinion. You have an opinion at any age, and students today are very aware. They are competing, they live in a tough world. Except, just like our politics, entry barriers in public debate are very high. You can send an article to a newspaper or a website. Who will publish it? Most people will not even read it. So this is a forum where we are telling you that we take you seriously. You have an opinion on a key issue. We try and float a key issue to you every week. Please give us your opinion. We'll choose first, second, third, fourth. We will publish them on our platform like any other article. So you will be in the company of many of these 30 big bylines in the country. And you will be there. There is no hierarchy. You will be there. And then we will also reward you. We'll give you certificates. And we'll also reward you with a bunch of very nice prizes for which we've lined up a lot of sponsors. But I can tell you, to have a byline like this, to have an article published like this, one, it is creatively satisfying. And second, it's a very good addition to your CV as you go ahead, besides, of course, the prizes. So I am requesting and I am appealing, and I'll be grateful if you could circulate it on your internal intranet or whatever you call it. We'll send you the announcements. Please contribute. Please contribute. You have everything to gain from it.
Wow. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for this extremely insightful session. From the BBC references and anecdotes to the Nawaz Sharif reference, that was extremely exciting to hear, to the private news media, from being a force for good to becoming like a small economy and then having some big egoistic anchors. I think you just unpacked the story in an extremely witty, sharp, and interesting way for all of us. That is your signature style that you are so well known for. And that heartens me because a lot of us, including our 400 odd participants on Zoom and another thousands of them on YouTube, would have got exposed to today. Thank you for unlayering and unpacking this huge conundrum that we find ourselves in and making sense of, helping us making sense of it. Thank you for sparing your valuable time. I, from the bottom of my heart, on behalf of Symbiosis International University, my management here, the Chancellor, the Pro-Chancellor, the Vice-Chancellor, the Organizing Secretary of the Symbiosis Literature Festival, our whole team, will like to express my gratitude to you for being a part of this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for being patient on a Sunday morning.